Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukatali.
And a very good evening to you and a warm welcome to Newsline Live. Now then, some of you may not actually watch it if there was a power cut. So if there is a power cut, I suggest that you want to watch it live, you might have to go onto the internet and watch it through Facebook or on YouTube. Now then, so it's all about power, and we thought that we would sort of talk power, shall we, instead of political power, energy. And who better than a former chairman of the Ceylon Electricity Board, and now, and before that too, a professor at the Department of Electrical Engineering, the University of Moratuwa, a homegrown lad actually, Professor Anura Wijepala. Very good evening to you, Professor.
Good evening, Faraz.
And thank you very much for being on the program.
Very nice to be on your program.
Thank you. Several times you've been here,
Yes.
of course. Now then, so you came from Moratuwa, you did your stint at the CEB, and you've gone back to Moratuwa now. Tell me, what's going on with our power crisis? Why is there a power crisis? Is it because we don't have dollars? What's the real story here?
I think I can also put back a question to you, but before that I will say the dollar crisis had worsened the situation.
Right.
But we had power crisis previous year and the previous year and the previous year and so on during the same period. The drought driven periods, especially from January to March, April, because our hydro capacity becomes smaller and smaller during this period, lack of rains. But I will put back a question to you, because you all are very much familiar with the international news as well. Now Sri Lanka is here, and we are now internationally famous for this power crisis. Now we are in trouble, long power cuts, we are dollar crisis and the fuel crisis and everything. But do you hear any other neighboring countries, Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, or Bhutan, Nepal?
They seem to be doing all right.
Yes, they seem to. They had also COVID.
Yeah.
They had also the COVID, and the international fuel prices have gone up because of various other factors. They also buy from the international
They're all buying
market.
from the same place.
Same place. And also our region is hit by the droughts and other things at the same time. So India doesn't receive rains these days. But in our country alone, there is a huge energy and a power crisis.
What does that mean? Has it been poor planning or what?
Not only poor planning, this planning was acceptably good in my opinion, especially in the electricity sector, but the implementation was deplorably bad and influenced by various parties to their gain.
Right.
They wanted to implement our power sector in the way they like, not in the way it is planned. For example, they thought in 2016-17, okay, now they are going to tender the Sampur coal power plant next week.
Okay.
So they went to the president then, and somehow or other convinced him we should stop it. So next week he went to India
to stop the
coal power plant, which had a history of 6 years of development.
Right.
Because it had been planned, it has been environmentally investigated and environmentally approved with certain conditions.
Right.
And with that company was about to float the tender, asking for the international players to come and put your price and say how much you want to put this up.
This is the CB would float the tender.
Not the CEB, that's a joint venture between India and Sri Lanka, that particular company.
Right.
They would that, and I was the chairman of that company.
Right.
And 1 week before we do it, the president went to India and told the prime minister there, we don't want to do this project. And he was under the influence of 1 or 2 individuals, not many. Only. And they cut it short. They never knew the gravity of that problem. But you know, the India has been present in Sampur in a geopolitical interest that we should have thought in 2010 without sacrificing our entire energy power sector. So we satisfied India with the geopolitical interest in 2010, saying that okay, if we balance the China's presence in Sri Lanka, we will give Sampur to you. And when the time came for the implementation, to cut it off with the geopolitical interest, they said we stop it.
So not to China, not to India.
Not to India. And then what happened is our power sector became minus of a 500 megawatt power plant. And if we started the construction in 2017 with the tendering, by today probably we would have the machines running with 500 megawatt power. Then no issue.
Okay.
Even without hydro, no issue.
Can I ask you this question, Mr. Wijepala? What is our total requirement in terms of power, base load and peak load?
Yeah, you put in the right way, because our daily demand varies hour to hour or minute to minute, and depending upon our requirement, our demand.
Yes.
So we early in the morning hours, say 12 midnight to about 5 a.m. we have the lowest demand. That's about these days about 1200 megawatt lowest demand. And then in the morning as a small morning peak, and then the day peak and a big evening peak. Evening peak these days run to something close to 2700 megawatts.
The evening peak.
Evening peak, right?
Okay.
And therefore I will prefer, and the CEB probably would prefer, if we have a base load about say 1200, 1400 megawatts.
And how much is the base load did you say now we have?
Now we have the coal power plant about 550 megawatts. And then the some combined cycle power plants which are often running into problems, That is, one combined cycle power plant is at Kalanichis belonging to CEB, 165 megawatt, which ran into many troubles recently. And one combined cycle power plant is this Sojit's power plant, which yesterday they announced as in trouble for a few days.
How many megawatts is that?
That's also 165 megawatts.
Right.
So you can see, so each minus means you have to use hydropower which is in stock
to supplement.
And on top of that we have the variable part. Variable part. So the variable part is also substantial. Now about another 1200 megawatt.
Right.
And that is met by various other forms. In the daytime we have support of a few renewables occasionally, not all the time.
Oh really? Why is that?
Why that is that that wind is seasonal.
Okay.
Right now we have 240 megawatt wind installed capacity, but from January to April or December to April we get about 20-30 megawatts only about 10%.
So at peak, when the wind's good, we're getting 230.
We are 230. That is from May to November.
So therefore we need to go somewhere else for the
we need somebody in the backyard to come and act when the wind is not blowing. That is why I am saying, the experts, not only me and other knowledgeable experts, are saying we must accommodate wind, solar and other variable kind of power sources in the right proportion. But unfortunately now wind investors go and tell the high authorities wind can solve the energy crisis in this country.
But it can't.
And the solar people go and say we can solve it. See the entire country is now bathing with solar, so we can solve it. So apparently the politician also look at the outside, see the huge amount of solar power coming in, why can't? And they also get interested. And that is how they have unfoundedly set this 80% renewable energy target for 2030, which in my opinion is a killing decision for our power sector, and the consequences we are yet to see. We are seeing the initial consequences, and the bigger consequence yet to see, and we must look at our countries around us and learn from them before we commit like that.
And internationally, Mr. Professor Wijepala, what technology system is employed to obtain the lowest cost power?
In my opinion and the expert opinion and the international opinion, at the moment coal power is the cheapest.
Right.
But unfortunately coal power has its own problems in view of this global warming factor.
So but we have clean coal and we have so-called dirty coal.
Yes, we have the clean coal. Japanese and other countries are implementing right now.
Yeah.
For your information, I can tell you, from 2020 to 2030, 10-year period, India is implementing 57,000 megawatts of new coal power plants.
Yeah.
Right? China is implementing 247,000 megawatts of new coal power plants. New coal power plants.
Okay.
And we thought we should not do a 500 megawatt power plant here to be clean and show the world we are clean.
But you know, my question about this business and the environment and so on is that if you look at a global picture of the pollution, Sri Lanka doesn't even register.
Nothing. We are in the African level.
Right.
There is a IPCC, International Climate Change Panel, and they have published their documents. In one of them says Sri Lanka 1 ton per year per person of carbon dioxide emission, which is in par with Africa. India is 1.6, right? And Americas and others are 5, 6, 10, 12 and so on. But all these developed countries have promised, they have reduced. India last year said we are 1.6 tons per person per year. By 2030 we can't reduce. We will have to increase it to 2 because our economic development. We don't want to lose it. We don't have people to suffer.
Is this a sort of cynical attempt on the West to sort of hold back the development of the...
I think so. India did a very intelligent good work last year. They said any NGO funding coming into India has to be scrutinized. They stopped everything because in our country also all these factors which are promoting all these wrong concepts are fueled by international funding.
With vested interest.
With vested interest.
Right.
And when they stop something here like coal power plant, more money is funded on them. And India, you see the internet and see, last year they stopped all the international funding, even to charity work.
Oh, okay.
Because they know the money come to charity and siphoned for other work, for blockading their development. And therefore they very correctly stopped it, and they will allow probably what are genuinely reasonable.
And Professor Wijepala, to further develop the Ceylon Electricity Board to international levels or international standards, what would you say are 3 points that need to be done, 3 things to bring it up to an international level?
Yeah. So, that CEB has been there as a government monopoly for the last 50 years. It was set up in 1969, so it's little over 50 years. Now it has been a giant monopoly doing a very essential service. So, and it is heavily unionized. There are 60 trade unions in 60 trade unions in CEB, right? So it is, and they are supplying a critical service. So the governments are also under their mercy sometimes. Therefore, to make corrections there is very difficult. But to put your questions right, I would suggest CEB should be operated. CEB should be operated as an independent body, governed by Public Utilities Commission's purview, and at a given tariff to generate, transmit and distribute electricity. If the government
who would set the tariff then?
PUCSL, depending upon the reasonable costs incurred by CEB. That is how the Act says.
Right.
Electricity Act says the correct procedure.
Okay.
But the political involvement doesn't permit that.
The implementation.
So what is number one reason is they should allow Public Utilities Action Commissions Act and the Sri Lanka Electricity Act to work together and to operate CEB as an independent body. But at the same time, on political or other views, government would like certain sectors to receive subsidized electricity. Then they should come and say, okay, you give subsidized electricity at these rates to, say, for example, Samurdhi beneficiaries. And at the end of the year or half year, they can ask CEB, how much is the loss incurred by you for implementing our decision? And then transfer that money to CEB, because they have made that loss because of that. And same way, if they want, government wants industries to be given cheaper electricity to keep them competitive, then they should calculate it. Maybe PUCSL can calculate and tell the government, because of your decision, this much should be go to CEB. So these quantities should be determined and transferred to CEB.
So that's the first point.
Yes.
What would the next point be?
Next point is CEB's management. CEB's management need to be kind of revamped. Now CEB's, I think last few weeks or couple of months, there was a big crisis about CEB's general manager's appointment. And historically they would prefer their most experienced engineer by days, not by any ability or anything,
but only because of by the period of service.
By period of service to be appointed as the general manager.
So it doesn't matter if this is some...
He joins normally the CEB 30 years back, 25-30 years back. So by the time he becomes eligible for on this criteria,
he's ready to go home.
He's ready to go home, and he has only about a few months to go, and also he might be, he might be suitable or unsuitable for that job. No estimation, so no assessment.
Purely on the basis of
so time. That is wrong.
On that note, Professor Wijepala, let's go and take a peek at this evening's headlines from that young, vibrant and brilliant News First primetime news team. We'll see you on the other side of the break.
Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And welcome back to Newsline Live. I'm in conversation with Professor Anura Wijepala, who's the professor at the Department of Electrical Engineering, the University of Moratoa. He's also a former chairman of the CEB. Professor Wijepala, before the break you were giving me 3 points to bring it up to the CEB, up to international levels. You told us about the independent, running it as an independent body under the purview of the PUCSL, and the rules already in place. It's only a question of implementation. I personally, not Professor, I personally believe that this is because it can't be implemented because of the politicization and the vagaries of politics and politically driven corruption. The CEB, the management should be revamped, was the second point. What's the third point?
Third point is implementing the long-term generation expansion plan as it is done. That long-term generation plan is not a CEB's document. They prepare it initially and they get public views and then get approval of the Public Utilities Commission. So it is a national document. It doesn't belong to CEB anymore because it goes through a public assessment process. Public can give views before it's approved.
In your view and in your experience, your practical experience, because you worked there as the chairman, who's stopping all this happening?
Government. It's a politician. For example, I can tell you like this. I was in another program in another TV channel yesterday, and there were some government officials. I asked this question. I think it's famous now. Now government has sent a letter to CEB saying now they should plan their long-term generation expansion plan to accommodate 70% of renewable energy by 2030. Right? They have sent a letter to CEB government with the approval of the cabinet. Then I asked these people, the government officers, now is there I would like to see any study done by international experts or local experts or the government experts, including economists, right? In determination of this number, we should go for 80% or 70% renewable energy by 2030. That is the optimum for Sri Lanka. I said I would like to see a document on this, based on which government took this decision. Apparently there is no such a document.
But surely, given when I asked you about the base load and the peak load, surely you can't fit all this the peak demand by using renewables only.
That is why it has to be systematically studied. I think government has decided these numbers in a very ad hoc manner without any study, unfortunately. And that has been given to CEB to prepare their generation plan, and I think this will further destroy our energy sector, and we will have more problems to come in the coming 5 to 10 years period and beyond because of this wrong decision. So even at this late time, I would suggest to government, whatever they are, I don't mind even renewable energy going to 90% if that is the appropriate number. So do a study, employ ADB or World Bank or any other experts they think appropriate, or local experts, and then ask them to justify what should be the number. and what should be the sources of electricity for generation for Sri Lanka, most optimum, and then prepare the long-term generation expansion plan based on that decision.
And now, Professor Wijepala, with the present system that we have, for good, bad or ugly, at the CEB, what 3 things should be done to revamp the CEB now?
I think that
the ultimate aim being to reduce the cost of electricity.
Yes, I think they should go for the implementation, preparation and implementation of the right long-term least cost generation expansion plan.
Right.
That will benefit the entire country, our industries, everything. Now the government thinks by giving a subsidy to industries, right, we can survive. That should be a short-term issue, few years, and then our production cost of electricity should come down. Then only we can give industries and the people and the hotels and everybody cheap electricity. By giving government subsidies for a long term means we are ruining ourselves. That is why, for us, if you hear, 3-4 days back, President ordered the Treasury to transfer 93 billion rupees on behalf of CEB to CPC, because CEB's generation cost is higher than their sales cost. Naturally, a loss is accumulated and somebody has to bear it. But that 93 billion doesn't go from any personal individual. That is what the taxes paid by you and me and the poorer people of this country. And we pay 2 electricity bills. One, to avoid power cutting. You know, if you don't pay the electricity bill at your home, CEB will come and remove their cut power. That is one bill. Second bill is every 5 years, 6 years, government transfer a block of money to CEB or to CP to cover the cost at CEB.
Is that about 60 billion?
CEB's losses is of 93 billion. This is what they owe to CPC.
This 60 billion is just like
93 billion.
Yes.
93 billion.
But what about this other thing that they give you a block amount of money to pay for?
CEB need a much bigger block. Now CEB has government has given 93 billion to return to CPC to neutralize their transactions. But CEB, as I learned, has another 120 billion to banks. So I really CEB to be break even now, another 120 billion is needed. All these are because their selling cost is lower than the generation cost. Why generation cost is higher? Wrong portfolio of generation options. And also within that, CEB's corruption, mismanagement, inefficiencies, all are included in that. So it is easy for each to manage CEB.
Including distribution losses and
everything.
What do you have a figure? What kind of losses are?
You know, Sri Lanka has better distribution losses compared to other countries, because CEB has done good work there. So our total electricity losses in generation, transmission and distribution comes to about nowadays 8.5 to 9%.
This is quite good.
Which is not quite good, acceptably good. Countries like Korea has say 4%, 5%, but countries like India has say 15 to 20%, and we used to have 20% 20 years back, but now they have improved to about 8.5%.
Is the CEB top heavy in terms of staff?
Yes, in all categories. I would say, including engineers, it is top heavy. And it's a burden.
I love these numbers, so I'm going to ask you a numbers question.
Yes, CEB has altogether about 25,000 people.
How much can you, if it was a private company owned
they
by
will do it 15,000.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Good job that our company hasn't bought it, because then our HR department have a field day.
Okay.
How many gigawatt hours do we use per year?
I think Sri Lanka, it was varying because of the COVID demand reductions and all that, but in general, in Sri Lanka, we need about 15 to 17,000 million units of electricity for our demand.
About 15 billion would be the minimum.
Yes.
Now, I want to ask a question. If that's how much we are, we're producing and using, if the CEB gets it wrong by just 5 rupees. I'm picking 5 rupees from the air. Just as an example. If they get it wrong by 5 rupees, then would it be fair to say that the losses would be 5 rupees times the 15 billion, which would mean in rupee terms a 75 billion rupee
Exactly.
loss?
Last year it was about 7 rupees, so it turned out to be about 105 or 100 billion.
So that's
loss.
why the CEB is constantly incurring losses.
Making losses. It's a very simple formula.
Yeah.
It is how. And also the unfortunate thing is corruption, little bit, whatever they corruption, everything is within
corruption
bill
there.
I think the corruption comes within CEB, within the officers and all these things to some extent. Then CEB is utilized by external parties, both government as well as the private sector, to implement, to achieve their targets.
Professor Wijepala, as we come towards the end of this program, we've got about a couple of minutes more. Would you encourage that Sri Lanka has a sort of a central procurement agency? It will procure whatever the government needs, whichever department. They'd have the different people. So if it's CB wanting supplies for their generators or distribution or whatever, they need to send their requirements after all the approvals to a central procurement agency, which will be composed of men and women of the highest integrity and under the purview of God knows who, the Chief Justice and all sorts of people, to make this absolutely transparent, because the CEB seems to be corruption seems to be inherent at the CEB. That's what I'm trying to say.
That could help. I would say that could help.
Yeah.
But existing system is also acceptable to some extent sans political intervention. Now the problem is existing setup is there, all these procurement committees
so
and
it
all
should
that.
really, the best solution is your point number one, that CEB should be an independent body.
Exactly. It should be an independent
and it
body.
doesn't come under the minister of anything.
And also it must be operated on a comparative basis.
On a commercial
yes,
basis.
Since we are running out of time, I would say, now see, whatever happens, it doesn't matter to CEB employees. Now even with all these power cuts, end of the year, they will get a 2 months bonus or something. Right?
Professor Wijepala, thank you so much for coming on here. We've unfortunately run out of time. But, please come back. One Shamir Rasuddin has a program called Face the Nation. It's not half as popular as this, but it's got 2.5 hours.
Okay.
So maybe you should come on there.
Okay.
And I'm sure Azra San will extend you an invitation. But on that note, thank you very much, Professor Wijepala.
Pleasure to be with you.
And I'm sure all those students that you lecture, they have got their stars in the right place, because they must be fortunate that you are teaching them.
Thank you, Faraz.
And thank you. And to all those students, do your best for Sri Lanka. On that note, take care, have a wonderful evening ahead of you, and as always, God bless you.